Today is Thursday, March 24th, and welcome to the 8:30 show. I'm KJ, and every Thursday night you'll find me here at 8:30 p.m. on YouTube at Metro Conservative Media. Please hit the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. At the same time, I'm also live on Facebook at the Metro Conservative Media Facebook page. Please like our page and join the conversation by commenting on this video. We will respond to your comments during the show. This is a show where I chat with various individuals about important issues that directly impact our communities. Tonight, I am talking with Nathaniel Gavronsky. He is a policy consultant and constituent advocate, and we will be discussing the Obama administration's policies and how it impacted the Black community. Thanks for joining me tonight, Nathaniel.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Yes. You have been on the show in the past, and we had a great conversation about the whole Russia-Ukraine conflict. And so after the show, you just gave so much information about just economic policies and the Obama administration's policies. So I said, I have to have you back on.
There's a lot to discuss.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So before we get into that, I want to start with something fun and just cool. I start each show with a random question and answer segment so the audience can get to know you a little bit better in a fun, cool way. So basically, it's a rapid fire round of questions, and you answer as quickly as you can with the first thing that comes to your mind.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So first, what are you most known for amongst your friends?
Being overly compassionate.
Okay. City or suburbs?
City. You got it. It happens in the cities.
Okay.
And my cat Kit Kat will agree with me on this.
Okay. All right. What quality do you value most in your friends?
Reciprocity. It's a very hard word to say, but basically being reciprocal in the amount of effort that I put in with other people.
Okay.
Reciprocity. It's a very hard word for me to say for some reason. It's the English language.
All right, but I understand what you're saying, and that is a very good quality to have in friends. So I certainly understand that. This is a good one. What is a man?
Well, I don't need to be a biologist to answer this question, even though I do have a degree in biology. But biologically, a man is someone who was born with the genitalia that would be dominated as male, which is because of having an X and a Y chromosome. But figuratively speaking, a man is more in depth than that. A man is someone who can be stern, steady, and disciplining in ways other than the way women can, not better or worse, but in a different way that make a joint effort easier for both men and women. A man is someone who can show pride in himself and others, but also be humble in his efforts.
All right. Well, you certainly answered that well. Like I would think anyone could, but that's another issue. So, all right. So what about this bigger world issue, racism or communism?
I'll be really honest with you. Racism, as it's being depicted in today's media, is in an effort to bring about more communism and socialism. So they are equal evils. And communism exists in the world, and it doesn't help out anyone that is living through the system. And racism does exist in this world. Unfortunately, it's not something that we can completely expunge from our existence because it's a human nature across all realms. But they're both equally tragic and a stain on humanity.
All right. What about this? Homeschool or public school? Which one would you, if you had to choose?
This really comes down to a parent's choice. People who advocate for homeschooling and for charter schools and all other alternatives to the public school system, we always say, well, this is the parent's choice. So this needs to be an equal choice for the parent to make that decision. In certain areas, public schools do have a tendency to be more successful in the rural areas, places like in Wisconsin, rural Wisconsin, like the Dakotas, parts of Nebraska. But when you get to urban areas like New York City, Chicago, DC, we're seeing that the homeschooling and the private schooling is a much better option for people.
Okay. Now, what would you do if you had to choose for your child or for
It would
yourself?
it would depend on the location I was in and what my school options were.
Mm,
I would be a great teacher and have taught many subjects, but there are certain things that I would want to have assistance on. And I do think the socialization process of children growing up is an important aspect of childhood. And to deny them that by only doing homeschooling might have some adverse effects that we really don't quite understand yet.
okay. All right. And then lastly, if you could meet anyone past or present, who would it be?
Lincoln.
Okay. All right. That's a great one. Great choice.
He's
Oh,
the only person to die to fulfill a campaign promise
oh. And what was that?
to preserve the Union.
Okay. All
His
right.
his death single-handedly reunified this country to where Wilkes Booth, who thought he would be welcomed as a hero in the South, was very quickly seen as a villain. And the death of Abraham Lincoln was one of the single most things at events that helped reunify this country, both North and South, after the tragedy of the Civil War.
All right. All right. Well, like I said, that's just like a fun kind of random mix mash of questions and for you, and so the audience can kind of get to know you. So I just want to quickly go through your background. If you could just tell the audience a little bit about your background. I know you are into policy, a policy consultant. What exactly does that? What do you do there?
Well, for me, it's about meeting with everyday people. Like I'm not about let's go meet all the politicians because they're going to have all the answers. No, I will go and I will door knock all year round, election year or not, and I'll talk to you like, hi, my name is Nathaniel. I work with a lot of different government officials, elected and appointed on the state and federal level. Are there any issues or things that you would want them to know about that could help benefit your life, or things that they should get out of to make your life better? It's how I open. That's how I answer every. That's how I initiate every conversation. And then I will bring that information in notebooks to elected officials across this country, at state legislatures, and in DC. I've met every president since Richard Nixon. Obviously not while they were all in office, but I've gone golfing with many U.S. senators, even at a young age of like 9 and 10. I was golfing with them. I have sought out to be at those key moments that will be key moments in history. I try to make them key moments of my present.
Mhm.
Even if there are things that I don't necessarily want to participate in, like Stormy Daniels. I don't if she's in the news again, but I wanted to go meet her, so I found out where she was going to be, and I actually watched her and Avenatti get into a fight. Well, not physically, but an altercation in Casey's parking lot in Des Moines, Iowa.
Wow. Do you know what they were arguing about?
Money, actually,
Oh, right.
money. Yeah, that's so I end up I couldn't actually find the place that she was supposed to be at. So I went to the gas station to ask where this location was. And the woman came out of this RV dressed up in an American flag and screaming. And out behind her came Avenatti. I'm like, well, that solves this problem.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I want to just make sure the audience knew a little bit about you and your background. So I want to get into the bulk of our conversation, which is the Obama administration, and as you mentioned in the beginning of the show or before the show, his predecessors' policies and how they have impacted Black communities. So can you talk about that a little bit? And then I want to get into as far as the fatherlessness in the Black community and how these policies have kind of impacted that and started it or assisted it.
Well, they are connected, actually. The policies, which I cannot honestly say that this was the whole point of it, but it is what has happened because of these policies. If you look at the times like during the Civil War and afterwards, when blacks being married was sometimes illegal, or the jumping over the broomstick part of the marriages, you would see that actually many more black children were growing up in a house with both a mother and a father. That, in fact, from the 1880s until 1940, blacks were more likely to grow up in a home with both a mother and a father than white children. And this is significant because this goes through the entirety of the Reconstruction period. A little bit, some of the stuff goes up during the Civil War and up and through the 20th century through Jim Crow. And blacks had a higher chance of growing up in a family with both mother and father than white children did. And it really wasn't until some of the policies that were enacted under the New Deal and a lot of the welfare programs that were developed through the 1960s that you start seeing a decline in mothers and fathers raising together their children, especially with blacks and Hispanics, where whites have also risen in the percentage of children that are raised in a single parent household. It is the outstanding how much worse it is for blacks and Hispanics and other minorities.
So let me go back a little bit. So why, we all know that having a two-parent household is the most ideal for raising successful children. So what happened? I know you mentioned the New Deal, and we know that now the Biden administration, along with our what's her name? Acacia.
AOC.
Yeah, AOC. I was just saying.
A woman I've also met, actually. She used to work in Union Square as a barista.
Right.
And that's where I first met her. And I also ended up coming across her when she was working at a bar. And I said, "Hey, you're running for Congress, aren't you?" And she said, "Yeah." I thought, okay, whatever. And then she won. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but she's pushing this sort of New Deal kind of policies, this big government assistance, social programs. This is what a lot of the left and the Democrat Party say is helping people and to help get people out of poverty. What are your thoughts on that?
It limits the ability to use energy to get people out of poverty. In fact, it restricts commerce so horribly that it does everything but help people, actually. You need energy. We need the ability to be able to fill up our cars and go where we need to go, if it's to take kids to daycare or school or to go to work. And so many activities you require energy to do. And by restricting the amount of energy you have or have access to, you're going to be restricting families' ability to grow and prosper. So the Green New Deal is basically just a way of being able to control your behavior in the guise of, planetary saving measures and to curb money flowing to, Russia or Venezuela, when actually all these policies just move the money we send for energy from one despot to another. It's really just one of those virtue signaling plans that makes people look like they're improving the world, when in reality they're actually doing the opposite and making people's lives, especially people that do rely on government services or people who are on the verge of maybe needing government services, they have to pay more for the everyday things that people who earn over $300,000 a year take for granted.
Now, what about the idea of these social programs? These social programs that give money to people, and as you mentioned, the programs that started under in the New Deal, back in the '60s, and things like that. How the narrative is that's helping. That has helped poor people and people in urban communities.
Well, here's the thing, and this transcends just race relations, but this transcends everyone who has to use these programs. Ask anyone on SSI, which is a Social Security insurance program, about what it's like to rely on the government for your subsistence. the maximum amount of check they can get is like a little over $800. Okay. Now, if they were to actually go get a job that would give them purpose in life, that would enable them to improve their situation in life, they're punished. In fact, they could lose their medical insurance. They could lose the other assistance they have to where working and trying to improve yourself will actually make it worse. You'll lose money by trying. And so you basically start punishing success. And so anyone who has to live on it and rely on these programs understands very clearly that the government, those who giveth can taketh away. And these programs that are geared for anyone who's a working poor or people who are disenfranchised or for whatever you want to call them, it strictly limits what they can do to improve their situation. It's called the cliff effect. So basically, you're moving towards a point where you could maybe get off the program and improve your standing. But when you get to that cliff, once you go over like by a few dollars, you end up losing $300 or $400 per household. And it shocks all your progress down to where you have to quit what you're doing that was getting you ahead and start back at the beginning. And all these programs are basically done that way.
Right, but SSI, that's disability. So these people, they can't work anyway, right?
Well, they're not homebound. And I'll be honest, and it's not just SSI. A lot of the welfare programs, you can only be, even if you qualify for both of them at the same time, you can only really choose one. And in 2006, when the Democrats took back control of Congress for the first time in 12 years, they actually made it worse. So there were programs out there to help people who were needing jobs. So you would get aid. You had to be working to get to be on this, or try to be working or engage in some type of program that could benefit your ability to get a job. Okay. There's also programs that would help single mothers be able to get into schooling, because an education, regardless of what you want to think about higher education, indoctrination, it is the single most thing that you can do to improve your chances of being able to get a career that'll pay you enough money to survive. If you were on the program that would allow you to, get job training, but then you also want to go to a school, you can only choose one, and they would take one away. And this was codified.
This was after 2006.
Well, this was passed by Democrats in the Congress and the Senate, who took over both chambers in January 2006. Don't forget, that was a midterm election, and the party in power at the time was George W. Bush, and he was a Republican. So typically, if you look at statistically, the party in power loses the Congress in the midterms. We're about to see that here with Joe Biden, where the Republicans are going to just trounce the Democrats in both the U.S. and Senate and U.S. House races. This happened again in 2006. And one of the first things the Democrats did was they started restructuring some of these programs that would very, very tightly restrict people's ability to utilize them to improve themselves. One of the key ones, and this was actually published in the Gender and Society magazine in 2007, which reported that in 2006, Democrats used what they call the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, and tweaked it to where people they didn't want you to not need the program. In fact, caseworkers who were working on this program in the big cities were discouraging people from doing activities that would actually lead them to no longer needing these programs.
Like what?
And going to school, for example. Okay, if you go to college, you need funding. You need to pay for funding to go to school. Okay, then you need, a lot of these people have children. They're single family homes, and so they need daycare. Well, if you got off the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program.
We call it TANF or something. TANF.
Yeah, TANF.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So this program would help pay for daycare and for other, like there's WIC, there's FIP, there's all these programs out there. This kind of is an example of what happened is that when you would try to go to college, you would lose access to this program because they made it so stringent to keep this program. You had to spend like almost 20 hours a week just proving that you deserve to be on the TANF program. So you're running around constantly to get information for your caseworker to prove that you belong in the program. People would be on and off of it all the time because the wild goose chase, and one person wasn't available for a signature, or you missed your appointment because the bus was late. Even though you would qualify for this and a program that would help you for school, if you would go to school and get money to help you go to school, they would take away this program and you would lose the ability to pay for childcare. So, and colleges really aren't set up for single parents. They're really not. There's not a daycare at most of these colleges. They're not set up for people in this situation. And this is kind of what happened in 2006, and then later in 2008, the Democrats pushed through a policy that would allow FICO scores to be used to determine housing, jobs, and for insurance. So you'd see someone who, because they couldn't go to college because they couldn't find a way to support their children, take care of the children while they were in school, they aren't able to get that job or a better education to pay for a job to give them disposable income. Without disposable income, you're not going to be able to develop a credit score by buying things on credit. So your FICO scores are really low. And across the Black community, people they're unbanked. That's one of the biggest hurdles for the Black community is the fact that they're not in the financial system, and so their credit. Most of them don't have credit. And they're punished for it. If you would try to apply for a job that you had a degree in and even had some experience from your university or college that would lead to you be able to be good at that job, because your credit score was low, they wouldn't hire you. If you want to move into a nicer neighborhood, you might have a job you've had for 5 years. You might have money to pay for first month's, last month's rent, plus deposit, plus a note saying I've been working here for 6 years, but you don't have a good credit score. They just wouldn't let you move in. They would say we don't have enough financial history on you to say that you would be a good tenant. For insurance,
this start until 2006. Or 2000?
No, this was happened in 2008. In fact, a couple of people who orchestrated this worked in the Obama administration. A lot of this came in after Obama got elected. He was the president-elect, and a lot of these policy authors, people who wrote the policy that led to these programs, worked in the Obama administration. And one of the things I talked to them about is what was this for? What was the end goal for this?
Right. And why did they do that? Why they put this policy?
Because this would keep a certain demographic, and they based it off economic demographics, but in reality, because of the reality of the world with people who are unbanked, the working poor, people who don't have really a lot of economic opportunities in their communities, this would affect them more. And that does have a tendency to affect people in urban areas more, which are majority Blacks. Mm-hmm. And this was done for the purpose of being able to keep them dependent on those programs. This is actually what I call the false start dilemma. Because, and you see under Obama and currently under Joe Biden and other Democratic plans, they do all these things that will push people into colleges. Okay, we will get you into a college, we'll get you through the admission process, we'll get you into college, and then you'll be fine. The problem is that the success rate of these people wasn't very high, and beyond just Blacks, Hispanics, and whites or whatever, you can see this across the board with people who maybe not be properly prepared for that type of school, that caseload of academic caseload. If you look at so I'll use Iowa for example. Iowa is primarily a white state. Right. They had the highest high school graduation rate at 91.6%. But their 4-year college completion rate is 35th in the nation. Now, the spread between 1 and 35, the completion rate is all below 30%. So a 4-year degree, the completion rate of a 4-year degree is under 30% across the board. Now, why is this?
Right.
Or is they don't have the right education? Do they not learn this stuff in high school? Well, for some of them, yeah, that is part of the problem. But they're lacking other skills that would help you just deal with being not necessarily, doing the schoolwork, but how to manage a household, how to manage stress levels, how to manage peer relationships successfully. And this is actually one of the parts where having absent fathers is a problem, because a mother and a father together can raise children on how to deal with different problems. Some things you want to go to your dad for, other things you want to go to your mom for. There are different things that children, I did, most of my friends did, regardless of where they were born, if they were born in the US or Ukraine or Germany, everyone has they talk to different parents differently about the issues. It's a need.
I want to back up. So I want to just make sure I understand this. So in 2000, I want to make sure I understand this whole FICO score thing. So in 2008,
FACTA is what they call it. They call it FACTA in 2008.
FACTA. Okay, FACTA in 2008. Someone in the Obama administration made it policy where your credit score would count towards you getting.
Employers should use it to determine if you were eligible for a job.
Right.
Landlords could use it to determine if you were qualified to rent an apartment. And insurance agent companies use it for automotive insurance. So
Right.
you take someone with the same driving record, but one with a 650 and one with a 550 credit score. You're looking at a 48% difference in cost.
And so you're saying the result of this is in urban communities, and Black people then were forced on welfare because they couldn't work.
Well, you're not. It limits you from being able to get a career that would allow you to crawl out of poverty. It's a different form of redlining. It really is, and it's not just Black. It's all working poor people, but it does have a tendency to have a larger reach against Black people. Now, I was actually working for a utility company for a while, and one of the things I found is that a lot of the customers that were Black asked me about how to pay their bills, and they were all using prepaid cards. None of them were banked.
Right.
Almost none of them. Well, if you're not banked, they don't have a credit score. In fact, we would have to, the company would have to do a credit pull before they would sign you up for service. Now,
and I know this for a fact because I work in an industry similar, and I find these people where they have these cards, and it's not a bank account, but it is a card that people are using nowadays, and like you said, it's just, I guess it's a government card that they're given.
Some of them are government. Some of them are actually still private enterprise. The thing is, though, is that you get charged huge fees for using these cards. Now, the reason why I was asking them, because I want to know, why do you use this for a bank account? They said, well, I don't want to do overdraft fees. I don't have enough money, and I'm over by $2. I end up getting charged $35. So there was a legitimate reason. They just didn't trust banks. And I know for a fact that a lot of banks, and this is the thing that I have done some research on, and I've interviewed and I talked to a lot of people about this. Blacks have gone into Wells Fargo, Bank of America, U.S. Bank, Chase Bank, Wachovia, Washington Mutual. This was, back even before 2008. And they weren't treated with the same amount of respect as other people were. So this isn't the government. This is corporate. So all those woke banks that are, paying for all that and all those, Black Lives Matter and all that stuff, they're actually part of the problem. It's not the government. It's corporations that are using this. Corporations decided, well, they don't have to use credit scores. The government just made it to where they could. A company could very easily, we could use your FICO score to determine if you're eligible for this position, but I'm going to sit down and have an honest conversation with you about your work history, about what skills you have and how you could benefit our company. I don't really care what if you're negative in your bank account by $50 or not, because the reason why you're applying for a job is because you need one. And if you don't have a job, how are you supposed to do this?
And let me ask you this, just for the sake of argument, because I know about, I know they do it in insurance for rating and things like that. And the reasoning behind it is studies have shown that people with better credit scores pay the bills. They're less likely to get into car accidents because they're more responsible drivers and things like that. That's the line I was always told to say is the reason why we were using credit scores.
So you're saying that by making people who don't have good credit scores pay 48% more for the same service, that we are going to somehow allow them to pay their bills better? We're actually this practice actually makes it harder for them to pay their bills. Instead of government policy that would enable people who are on the line of financial ruin to be able to pay their bills by getting those jobs, by getting housing that's in a safer area to where they can have a shorter commute to work. By preventing that, by using FICO scores, you're preventing these people from being able to develop a credit score. It's a cycle. Now, again, like I said, back to my false start dilemma. They set people up for failure. They were pushing people into college that weren't prepared for it, not academically, not socially. Not they didn't have the discipline for it, and it's nothing to do with their IQ. It's nothing to do with the color of their skin. It's how they were prepared for that experience. And look at a city like Baltimore, for example, where Baltimore spends more money per pupil in this for education than anywhere else in this country, and they have the worst outcome. I think what only 2% of the school's children in Baltimore can read at grade level, at their appropriate grade level, but they're graduating anyway. So look at Iowa. We high graduation rate, but really under 30% completion rate for a 4-year college. Imagine what the kids coming out of the Baltimore public school system are dealing with. Now here's the problem: is that they get into that I call false start. They get pushed into a college situation where they don't have the skills. They were never taught the skills. They were never given the proper amount of training to be successful, and a lot of them fail out. And in fact, that Gender and Society article from 2007 discusses this with mothers who had this problem. One got into a program that allowed her to go into nursing school, right? That was her plan. Mm-hmm. She got loans for it. They gave, we'll give you loans. We're gonna outsize this. We'll make sure you get loans. We're gonna force you into the school program because we're gonna say that you have to accept her as a student. And then she couldn't do it. She didn't have the skills or the other assets needed to be successful, and she ended up dropping out. And she defaulted on those loans because she still owed the loans, even though her schooling didn't work out. So then when she found something that she could do by working those dead-end jobs, getting some skills, and then trying to go back to college, those programs that they did in 2006, which either pick one or another, and they really were working against you of doing anything that would make you a more successful, less government-dependent person, they would make sure that you wouldn't have the ability to do it because they would want you either had daycare or you had college. You couldn't do both. And this was their design. So because all these democratic policies are set to do two things. This is my false start dilemma is that the politicians need something to fundraise on and to run on. So they run on the promise of elect me and I'm going to make sure you have this and this and this and this and this. And I'm going to fundraise on that so I can campaign on it. But if I actually solved that problem, how would I fundraise on it? How would I run on that problem if the problem has been solved? So the other aspect of it is now they got to make sure you're going to consistently need those programs without ever getting off. So the cliff effect, to where they punish you for working on getting out of it. You can only pick one of the other programs, but you need both of them to be successful. Or as you start getting out of the depths of poverty, they punish you, and you by going to work and earning $400 a month from your labor, because people start off slow. They start off slow in their earnings. It's part-time and then full-time. And even then, it's not a lot of money to be entry-level income across the board.
Well, what about that?
What about you $600?
Well, what about that? Because you see where you have these progressives who say, we need a working wage, raise the minimum wage, and then we can living wage. I'm sorry. And then we can, afford our families and do what we need to do. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, then you get what they call the inflation wage death cycle, which is what we are currently in. Basic economics, the more of something you have, the less it's worth. So the more money they keep pushing into the system, it lessens its value. So inflation is basically the value of the dollar for purchasing goods and services depreciates over time. We're at a 40-year high at nearly 8% inflation right now. So what that means is over this period of year, the dollar is getting worth less and less and less. Now you also have, by pushing up the wages, you also push up cost. So real wage growth, at the highest it's been in the last 20 years, and it's only been this level once under the Trump administration, was 4.3%. That was real wage growth. I mean, and those people were getting jobs that were paying them more money that allowed them to have a higher amount of purchasing power. Well, at 4.3%, and then inflation being nearly 8%, you actually lose 4% of your wages your wages go down by 4%. Our real wage growth is not even near that right now. And the wage growth under Biden has been at the top, not at the bottom, to where under Donald Trump's administration, you saw the real wage growth grow at 4.3%, but a majority of that was by women and other minorities, where 62% of all new businesses were created by women. The real wages of blacks and Hispanics were at the highest level they had ever been, ever.
So what's happening here? Because we know the data shows that, you know, African Americans, women, Latinos, all did far worse under the 8 years of Obama. And you have Obama and Democrats touting, you know, that they're here for people middle class and for their, you know, African Americans continue to vote. They voted for Obama and they voted for Biden. So what happened there? Is it the
false promises made by politicians who have no intention of keeping them? I can promise everyone in the world. It doesn't mean I'm ever going to deliver it, but I can fundraise it on it every 2 years.
And let's talk about that. So politicians, because I know we're coming to the end of our time, I want to talk about this comment we have here. So Stephen asks, how does he feel about DeSantis forcing a financial literacy requirements to graduate high school? What are your thoughts there?
I think it should be implemented nationwide. I think home economics should actually, as an entirety, home economics, financial economics, basic economics, there's no practical knowledge on how economics work in this country, and that's a problem. And see, Iowa, they tried that, but there's no verification that schools are doing it. There's no, when I talk to students, high schoolers, and people who just got to college, like, what are you missing? Like, I don't know how to balance my bank account. I don't know how to sign a lease on an apartment. I don't know how to do set up utilities. I don't know how to manage these types of crises, which aren't necessarily academic in nature as far as in math, reading, writing, science, but it's life skills that these people don't have. And for other members of the community across the country, it's even worse.
Mm-hmm. I want to change gears a little bit and ask you this. Does the Democrat Party have an issue with men? You mentioned last time at the end of the show how these social policies have been very adverse to fathers. Can you talk more about that?
Well, in New York City, for example, if you're a single mother, we're on government assistance through the city, and if the father is in the picture by like living in the apartment, you lose those benefits as the mother. They take, well, the father's living with you. We're going to count his minuscule income, and a lot of times it is very minuscule income compared to the cost of living there. They will take away the entirety of one of the mother's income benefits. It usually has something to do with either the child care itself, which prevents both parents from working, which in New York City, you need both people working. You lose child care. You lose your access to it. Other benefits as far as rent assistance can be drastically reduced, even if the father's income is insignificant compared to what the housing costs are. They'll punish you for having the father in the picture. And it's not just New York. It's Chicago does the same thing. DC areas a lot the same way. I've worked in others. I've been working across the different state legislatures to remove this from the guidelines and assistance. So what I found out is a lot of mothers are just lying about having the father in the photo. Problem is in New York, they come and knock on your door. They come and check on you. And if there's proof that there's a man in the house, you kiss your check goodbye. So a lot of people lie in the Midwest because they don't send people out to check on you. So they just lie like, yeah, there's no man here at all. But in New York, they will come knock on your door.
Yeah, and it's hard because you have single mothers, and because the government, at least I know in Baltimore, they will provide medical care also for the mother and for the children. So
not for the guy, not for the father.
Right, not for the father.
And here's the thing: according to the Democratic Party, there is no such thing as male or female. So I think it's a level of sexism that is so complicated because technically there's no such thing as sex or gender, but they're discrediting people who don't identify as a woman, basically. So I wonder what would happen if a woman identified as a man, how they would handle that. I don't know of anyone who's tested this yet, but I wonder just what their program would say if two women were living together and one identified as a man. I really want to see them, the government policy and hacks figure out how they're going to punish them, because listen, women are given extra benefits for owning a business. You get any business with 51% ownership by a woman gets special tax credits. It gets special opportunities that a business owned solely by a man does not get. Now, there's a reason for this. We want to get women in the workforce, and sometimes, they do need that extra push. I mean, I'm not saying they don't, but when everything is geared to where the men have to, who had the same background, the same level of difficulty growing up, single family home, broken home, growing up being a man, and a woman who grew up in a 2-family household in the suburbs with a nice shiny new Cadillac every year, and a man growing up having to use a bike with a bent rim to get to and from school every day, but they're treated as if the man is privileged somehow.
Well, he's the patriarchy. Fight against the patriarchy, right?
But see, the thing is, we need to get rid of this, because everyone says, well, we got to help the black community. Well, how about we just help the community? Black people are just people. White people are people. Economics has demographics based on economics versus skin color. If you geared your policies towards that, you would not only help all the people who were black, but you'd help all the people who were Hispanic, people who were white, people who were they need the extra help. And here's the thing. It is there are more blacks living in poverty than there are whites in this country, and that's a problem, because they are limited in their economic opportunity because of the credit scores. One, they don't have good schooling options in their area to get better education. And this is partially because the schools, if you look at administrative costs in urban school systems compared to the administrative costs of rural school systems, they're bloated. The reason why charter schools work in bigger cities is that their administrative costs are minimal. The money goes to children, and that's the reason why they have better results. Mm-hmm. See, blacks are at 12 to 15% of our population, and they're always seen as being 50% or 54% of the worst parts of society, when in reality they should be 90% of all of our economic growth. Blacks specifically could be the biggest economic powerhouse globally in the United States, but they're given these programs prevent them from expanding their minds, horizons, or opportunities. Their programs prevent them from being able to grow up in families with both parents. The programs are geared to keep them in that perpetual cycle of poverty, so they need to keep voting Democrat so they can keep getting getting programs that will only allow them to stay in poverty. If given the proper educative tools and the economic opportunity, not based on their FICO scores, but based on their actual knowledge. Listen, blacks throughout American history have done some of the greatest things that the United States lays claim to. NASA had many black scientists that made going to the moon possible. The U.S. Revolution itself, the War of 1812, the U.S. Civil War, World War I, World War II. Blacks have had they've gotten almost no credit for it, but they were some of the most determining factors in U.S. history, and they're not given credit for it. They're told that you're victims of everything. When in reality, if we got them out of that mindset, and we gave them the proper tools, and encouraged them to get the proper skills, get the higher education once they're ready for it. And then this is everybody, not just blacks, but like everyone, but blacks themselves, that group of population could be, because they're underbanked, the financial growth of their wealth would explode. Mm-hmm. Home ownership of blacks would skyrocket. So you would see black neighborhoods values going up, the value of land going up, which would increase all of their incomes. Generational wealth would explode among the black community. Instead of everyone selling their homes, we buy junk houses, blacks keeping those houses, building them up, having generational income, generational wealth growing. There is not a country in the world, not a demographic globally that could outperform blacks. And the United States government's policy under Obama, under Biden, Kamala Harris, and the Democrats have geared and set people for that false start dilemma to where they can never get off the starting line because every time they try, they're pushed backwards.
Yeah. I mean, and not only that, just even with the crime and combating it. We have a district attorney here in Baltimore City who believes that not prosecuting crime is the way to help Black communities within Baltimore City. And they have this whole thing about restorative justice. So with this, they put this in sentencing guidelines, and the city has just run amok in crime.
Well, here's something I want people to understand. From the year 1884 into the year 1965, under Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement, there were a lot of blacks that were lynched, unlawfully lynched. Do you know that from that time period, there were several, like almost 4,000 known cases throughout the South that were of blacks being lynched. Do you know we have that many black people dying at the hands of other black people in every 6 months?
Yeah.
Black on black crime. So blacks are, like I said, 12 to 15%, depending on the research study you see. And they're attributed for killing for 54.6% of all the homicides in the United States. 98% of which are the black people.
But our state's attorney just did a press conference last week, and she was quoting giving these numbers, and she said that it's due to racism in the criminal justice system. Black people are being targeted far more and incarcerated far more than any other group, and that's why you have more of blacks being locked up.
Well, a couple of things that we could do to address that. One is that they have shown that, and this was Barack Obama, by the way, who said that children that grow up in homes without a father are 5 times more likely to go to prison. Mm-hmm. So I mean, they're committing a lot more crimes. So by getting rid of the programs and the stanchions of all these programs that prevent fathers being in their children's lives, especially black fathers, and that itself would start lowering the number of the incarceration rate for black families. Also, okay, I need everyone to go look this up. It's called the hierarchy of deficiency needs.
Say that again.
Hierarchy of deficiency needs. Now, these are the things that this study came out back in the 30s, was reviewed in the 40s, the 50s, the 70s, and 80s, and it's held to be true. In fact, they even did a study with monkeys in the 50s that show that the same principles apply to primates. People growing up, children, they need certain things: air, water, food, shelter. They need love. They need a mother's love, a father's love. They need these certain things. These certain things allow them to build onto the next level, the next level, to the next level, next level. You keep going up higher to where you're able to be artistically inclined. You're able to eventually you learned altruism because your needs are so well met. You want to increase the well-being of other people. Then it becomes the transcendental hierarchy of needs. But a lot of these families living in these poor neighborhoods, especially in the urban centers, they're lacking some of that structure and that guidance and that security that the fathers provide. So what they're doing is they're seeking it out in gangs, in crime, in the gangs give them structure and securities the father is not providing because the father is not there. So eliminating the deficiency of the security of that's from the lack of fatherhood, you're going to start seeing the decreasing in gang membership and participation. By decreasing gang membership and participation, you're going to see a lot less crimes. You're going to see a lot less incarceration. This is a cultural problem that we need to discuss, because it is Hispanics, there are Jewish gangs, there are Asian gangs, there are a lot of them.
Jewish gangs?
Yeah, the Jewish mafia is a real thing. It does exist. It's the Latka black market is quite interesting, but there is just this is a humanity situation. It's humanity. Blacks are people. They are part of humanity. And policy in the United States has been such that these people, their needs have been ignored. As far as the hierarchy deficiency needs, we just see more government programs can solve what they're missing. And what they're missing is a strong central family, by having the mothers and the fathers equally participate in their in the upbringing. And by looking at, see what 1965, 25% of black families children grew up in a home with only one parent. Today it's 73% that grow up in a single family home.
It seems like we're moving farther away from that, though, because now, I mean, we were talking about at the top of the show, they're almost trying to recreate gender roles and remove gender roles. That's why, to me, it was so problematic this week when you have the nominee for Supreme Court can't define woman, and she made it seem like it was because of it would have some type of bearing on any cases going forward. 2 years ago, this has just been within the last 2 years that we've become this, where we don't know what a woman is. We don't know what a man is. This is something that should just be elementary. It shouldn't even be up for debate. So how?
Yeah, but if she would say that she could potentially offend 0.06% of the transgender community, of the number of people in society that are transgender is 0.06%, or the 2% of people who identify as gay, lesbian, and bisexual, and the other letters that I can't always remember. It's literally, so if you add it all up together, it's maybe like around 2.8% of the population in the United States. They're trying to not offend. But they're making everyone else live under tyrant. Tyrants can be one or two things: the minority ruling over the majority, or the majority ruling over the minority, and it can go either way. It really can. So what we're seeing is a tyrant system of little under 3% of the entire population, holding the rest of the population hostage on language, on science, but see, the thing is that this has real world impacts. There are women who lost potential college spots, academic spots, due to athletic performance, because a guy decided he wanted to be a woman and participate in women's sports. In Iowa, that's no longer illegal. They passed a law that barred that. New York, you can still decide tomorrow that you wake up today being a man, you wake up tomorrow being a woman, you want to participate in women's sports and get all the first place trophies, and then get an athletic scholarship to a university, and not have to pay for school, and you end up removing an actual woman's spot. So it's an attack on women.
Is it really about them not wanting to offend this 0.2% of the population? I don't think so. I think it's far more.
It's not entirely the thing, but again, the nuclear family they see as being problematic for their worldview.
Right.
See, in communism and socialism, it's everyone is the family, so it's like everybody. So that's the problem. The nuclear family doesn't really work with American form of communism, where everyone lives in a commune and everyone just kind of passes around each other for sexual partners, which I don't understand why everyone want to do that. It removes all intimacy from that type of behavior. Mm-hmm. It removes, and they over-sexualize children. They over-sexualize people. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a black guy in Des Moines a couple of years ago, and he felt that he was being over-sexualized in the media. Explain this to me. Like, I don't understand. Like, I did not know what he was talking about. He says that all you hear about, this is from his perspective, is black men with their sexual anatomy and being always that they must have status, be with the white person. I I going off of what he said, and I've never really looked at anything like that, nor have I ever really seen this from my perspective. So hearing from it, he says that he's over sexualized, blacks over sexualized with their physique, with what they're supposed to be able to do in the bedroom, with who they're supposed to date. That he feels over pressured by society on what is prestigious and goals for himself in relationships. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. So if there's anyone watching this that has any comments, I would really like to get some more feedback on this, because he's the only one I've ever heard talk about it. But if he feels about it, maybe other people feel the same way about it. So I would like to actually hear more about this. Do other black people feel that they are being over sexualized because of their blackness?
It's probably a tough thing to seek out, though, because as you mentioned, I mean, it is a real thing where you have this idea that in the black community, and particularly black men, bigger is better, harder is better. And so you have this idea that, men probably have to live up to these narratives. And them talking about not wanting to live up to them, especially in this over-sexualized culture that we have anyway. Probably wouldn't find too many men talking about it. I would.
Another thing about relationships with people is that they have a problem with society. All the wokeness has a problem with two people: white men, and I would have to say black women, because how many commercials or movies do you see where there's a white man with a black woman?
Right.
Sonic the Hedgehog is the only one I have seen where there's a black woman to a white man. Commercials are always promoting a black man with a non-black woman.
Right, I know.
It bothers me. Yeah. It on a principal level is that black and white couples only work if the man is black. Like, why don't you celebrate black women being equally attracted to white men?
It's not the black women, though. And I actually was researching this many years ago. Black women, and it's gotten a little bit better now, but they are not. They're not looked at as the ideal. And so you have this narrative that's painted that black women are generally the last one to choose. If you have a white, Asian, Latino, black women are not seen as the ideal as far as looks in society. It's like a narrative.
Well, I can tell you this much: those people who don't see black women as being beautiful need to raise their standards, because black women are some of the most beautiful women I know. I mean, you can't say, well, look at Destiny's Child. I mean, those are very, very gorgeous black women. Right. Look at the Williams sisters. But it almost feels like they stigmatize black women by never putting them in positions where they're in relationships in media, like on commercials or TV shows or movies with white or Asian men. And I think that might be part of the problem, is that because they're never shown as being in those successful relationships, people don't even really notice it. I notice it because I'm autistic and I notice these random little trends. But black women need to be celebrated. And don't get that woman, that black person that helped NASA and actually helped with the CIA and aspects. They were black women, not men. They were black women. And that really needs they just really only do it for virtual signaling. If they really cared about race relations, it wouldn't be so much about we gotta make sure there's always a black man in there with the white with a non-black woman. Let's have all of them together, potentially being in relationships. But virtual signaling only pushes one key aspect of the narrative, not what it is in reality. And here's the thing: back in the 1940s, only 2% of the population saw that mixed marriages in a favorable light. Now it's like over 90%. And this is like people reporting, both blacks and white reporting what they saw of this. It's way more seen as being a non problem. Like everyone accepts it as the normal aspect of life, but they only ever show black men with non-black women when they do these virtual signalings. And I think it really hurts a lot of those black girls out there that don't really, children don't grow raised racist. They're taught it later on, but if they're never actually shown as being the desire of a white guy or an Asian guy or I don't know, yellow, blue, whatever, that I guarantee you it has an aspect on to their psyche that they're only desired by other blacks versus black men are desired by everybody. I guarantee you, if you started asking a large segment of black women if this was something that played in their mind, I bet you would get some interesting feedback. And I would like some of the viewers here, if they have any feedback or anything like that to share, I would love to hear it. Because I'm a student of this as well. And to learn, you need to interact with people about what they feel and then take what they say as truth until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Nathaniel, we are at the end of our time. Once again, it's always a pleasure talking with you. You are a wealth of knowledge on all types of topics. So, after this show, we got to do like a dating show where we get white guys with black girls. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, I mean, you are a wealth of knowledge. Let me just go through these comments because we do have some here. We have B, who says, I have waited for almost 65 years for blacks to get over the color of their skin. We did in the 1970s. Sex education is a failure. It was supposed to reduce teen and unwed pregnancies. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Are you familiar with Kevin Samuels? He's a guy out of Atlanta who does these. He would be a good person to talk to get information on these types of conversations. So someone said, did Kevin Samuels have something to do with that?
What would do with what? What was it do with what specifically?
I think he may be talking about the relationship aspect. I'm not sure. Maybe about mixed interracial relationships. The perception of black women. So Kevin Samuels is a relationship kind of a guru. And he's been pretty hard on black women, actually, just talking about just pushing against this whole black women, independent woman thing.
It's not just black women. Like, you ever been to France? If you try to open a door for a woman to a French woman, she'll slam it in your face. Wow. Don't offer to buy her flowers. Don't offer to buy her chocolate. Don't do anything that would show, oh, you're a woman. Let me do something kind to you, because they will hit you.
Wow. See, well, I think it's this whole feminist movement and also pushing women into the workforce. I mean, more women are in the workforce now. They're making money. And so they have this idea that they can do it all on their own. Now, I don't need a man to assist me to do anything. And I mean, that may play out in the 20 or 20s.
And I hear that a lot with women. I don't need a man. But I'll tell you one thing for sure. There's not a man out there that doesn't need a woman in his life. Mm-hmm. Every woman can be like, I don't need a man. I don't think that's fine. I don't need a woman to need me. I would like a woman to want me around. Right. But you're never going to hear a guy say, I don't need a woman. You're never going to hear a man say that. He might, not like some of the things, the honey-do list stuff. But I don't think you're ever going to come across a man who says he doesn't need a partner. He doesn't need a woman in his life. Even it's just never going to happen.
All right. Well, again, as I mentioned, we are at the end of our show. Is there any last thought you'd like to leave anyone with, or any ways someone can reach out to you or connect with you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter, Nate Gavronsky. The Twitter handle will be there. When it comes time to, all right, this is the best piece of advice I could give to you guys right now. You should seek out doing the things that are right. Supporting the lesser of two evils is still supporting evil. Mm-hmm. There might not be a right choice that you're given. So maybe instead of taking either or of two bad options, to find a different path. Don't ever choose the lesser of two evils because you're still doing evil. Always find a way to do what is not evil. And I believe that you will find more happiness in your life than being forced to choose between two bad options.
All right. Wow. That's definitely very the best advice I've heard in a long time. So thank you for that. All right, well, that wraps up this episode of the 8:30 show. We are all over social media under Metro Conservative Media. Like, share, and leave a comment, and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, check us out on our website at www.metroconservativemedia.com. We love to get your feedback. I hope to connect with you again next Thursday at the same time. Wishing you warm days and starry nights. Good night.